You're listening to the DevSoc Dispatches, a community-led conversation where each episode takes you on a trip of our thought of the day. Each episode taps into the world of mental health and physical movement, which we then discuss to see how we can thread them into our everyday. Concise, actionable, down-to-earth topics that provoke both thought and meaning without the drama. Stay wavy.
Hello, and welcome to the DevSoc Dispatches podcast. My name is John, also known as DevSoc's Head of Self. How many children chuck or kick a ball around and dream of one day playing for their country? The pathway from talented child to professional sports person, however, is long and extremely hard. To get there takes herculean amounts of focus and determination, amongst many other things. My guest today, however, has done just that. Ruaridh McConnochie's rugby journey started at the age of 8, playing for London Scottish in Richmond, before moving to Kent and playing in the first 15 for Cranbrook School. Later, Ruaridh played for the University of Gloucestershire, as well as playing for Nuneaton, RFC, eventually joining Hartpury College. And it was at Hartpury that he made his England Sevens debut at the 2015 Dubai Sevens, aged 24. Ruaridh's international exposure continued in 2016 when he was selected for Team GB's Rugby Sevens team at the 2016 Summer Olympics. They then went on to win silver. In 2018, Ruaridh made the leap to 15s, signing a professional contract with top English club Bath, playing in the Aviva Premiership. In June 2019, he was one of just 4 uncapped players named in England's preliminary World Cup training squad, earning his full England cap on the 6th of September 2019 against Italy. Outside of rugby, Ruaridh volunteers for Give Us a Shout, a charity supporting young people in crisis. Our topic today was focus. Amongst other things, we talked about Ruaridh's unintended journey into professional rugby, the need for team as well as individual focus. We highlighted some of the key tools and aids to maintaining focus, the importance of keeping perspective, and the all-important support from family, friends, and colleagues. We even got some of Ruaridh's predictions for this year's Six Nations. This was a truly fascinating conversation and had some really unexpected observations. Good morning, Ruaridh. We are delighted and very happy to have you with us. You are definitely our kind of the first sports person, dare I say, sports celebrity. We're honoured to have you with us. So thanks so much. How's it going?
Morning, John. Yeah, it's going well. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it. Just at the moment, sat icing a knee that I did a couple weeks ago. So I've been feet up for the last few weeks. So excited to actually spend some energy talking about things.
It wouldn't be a conversation with a pro sportsman unless you were icing a knee or recovering from an injury or something. So good scene setting, Ruaridh. Well, like I said in the intro, from talented kid to try scorer at the World Rugby 7 Series, that's an amazing journey, Ruaridh, and hopefully there's a lot more in front of you. When you look back on your career, is there a period you look back on particularly fondly?
Yeah, definitely. There's probably a few periods in there. I think my year out when I was still an amateur in New Zealand, my first exposure to men's rugby, the big culture shock, going from schoolboy into fully fledged men's Maori team out in New Zealand for a year was incredible. Starting my sevens journey, going to the Olympics was kind of a dream come true. I'd never thought I'd be anywhere near a competition of that standard 12 months before, let alone a few months. So yeah, as I was a kid, I always used to watch the Olympics. So to have rugby sevens in it was incredible for me to know that I could watch it and then to be a part of it and then to go win a silver medal was obviously just, incredible. And then I'd say I'd finish off by, the 2019 World Cup with the England 15 side was again something similar to the Olympics where it was definitely not on my radar 3 months before I went, let alone a few years. So it came out of the blue, and I just loved enjoying the journey and the roller coaster that came along with it.
I love the idea of you sitting there as an 8-year-old watching the World Cup on TV and then finding yourself playing it. That's incredible, isn't it? Did you sit there as an 8-year-old thinking, I'm going to get there, I am going to get there, or did it kind of happen organically?
It happened pretty organically, and to be perfectly honest, it was the same as the Olympics. I remember watching Steve Redgrave win his gold in Sydney, his last goal, and like I remember watching that and thinking, like, how cool is this? Like, all the biggest and best sports men and women from around the world are coming together for this huge tournament. And again, same with the Rugby World Cup. I remember, obviously, as everyone growing up in England remembers that 2003, the day in October and stuff like that. So to end up being there, I kind of gave up on my childhood professional dream when I was 16, because that's when boys used to get picked up in academies or county size. I never went through any of that. So I almost fell into professional rugby by accident at the end of uni. Wasn't planned at all, and then ended up going to these tournaments that I only ever dreamed of being there as a spectator, let alone as an actual athlete competing there.
It's interesting you say that. Actually, I was having a chat with a friend of mine recently who runs he's the head of the youth training for the RYA, so training all our Olympic sailors, and he brought up a similar point to the one you've just made about young kids might be very talented and they nurture that talent, but actually the real deciding point is when they're old enough to make the conscious decisions for themselves, to follow their dreams and to really dedicate themselves to it. And that's when they become genuinely interested in them as sports stars. Is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think mine was definitely, I obviously had given up on my dream to become a professional rugby player. I went away to New Zealand for a year, came back, did university where I studied sports science and was ready to go into a career of teaching. That's what I enjoyed the thought of and wanted to do. And then it was in my last year at uni, my sort of current uni coach at the time, and he was almost a mentor for me, making that transition from amateur to professional, kind of sat me down and said, look, I think we've got a good chance to try and become either, at the time it was National One or Championship. That was the goal. It was that you could make either a career out of it or a very good part-time career out of it. So that was the goal. I then ended up playing for England students, and then GB University Sevens side, and from then fell into a trial with the England Sevens, and suddenly 6 months later, 3 months before I finished uni, I was offered a 1-year contract with the England Sevens. So it was definitely not something we planned for, but we were planning to try and do everything possible to see how far I could get, but we probably didn't think I'd get as far as I did.
Well, teaching's loss is rugby's gain, Rory. Definitely amazing. And I mean, we want to talk about focus. The focus for today is focus, and it's something we hear a lot about. We hear about it in so many different spheres of life, be it just on a personal level, as a business, and of course now I have the opportunity to ask a professional rugby player about what does focus look like to you as a pro rugby player, and obviously there'll be some personal input in there as well.
Yeah, I guess that it's either personal or it's as a team, that focus. And I think now more than ever, with the past few months that my club Bath Rugby have been through, where we've been a proper rut, bottom of the table, haven't been able to win games. I think we've won sort of 2 in 14. And for me, it's the first massive moment in my career where as a team, we've had to fully focus on the week in, week out things. I think if you start to look outside and look externally to see who's making comments about us, what other people are saying, what's happening around the league, what's happening potentially at our club, but above our pay grade and not for us to know about, not for us to worry about, sorry. That's when it starts getting tougher and tougher. And I think we've learned quite a lot in the past few months just about how we can bring it back to just us and how we can control everything that we can control in the weeks leading up to games or in the environment. If we really feel as players there needs to be change in the setup, or in the whole club environment, then we need to start taking onus from ourselves, and push for change that way. It can't just be handed to us on a plate. It can't just be people telling us what to do. We've got to sort of stand up and be counted for in that department.
That's amazing, Roy. Just that in just that short little explanation, you pull out some amazing points there. The internal versus external focus. Love that. The team focus versus individual focus. Distraction from the outside as well. There's a lot going on there that I'm sure will resonate with everyone listening. I was particularly drawn to the concept of you as a team focusing. How much of when you look at that subject of focus, how much are you doing as an individual versus how much are you really leaning on the team or doing it as a team?
I think it's a bit of both. I think you've definitely got to bring that focus in as an individual. So for me, if I'm injured now, and it's so easy to let your mind sort of run away with things like, oh, it's unfair, like it's rubbish, we're losing loads, I'm now injured, like I'm miserable. But actually, what can I do as an individual to obviously help make myself better, but keep pushing everyone around me? So whether it's standards around the club, whether it's holding people accountable for what they do if you don't feel like they're living up to the standards and values that we want to push as a club going forward. And that's players or management. I think potentially in the past, it's normally just been about players, but the more you're in this environment and the more you grow, the more you realize that actually we're all culpable for things and we're all accountable for things. So we've got to be able to hold the head coach or the director of rugby just to the same standards as I hold an academy player walking in on his first day at the club. So I think that's one area where I feel there's been a lot of growth in the last few months for me personally and people around the club. We are all on the same journey here, and we all want the same goal of it, which is actually win a premiership, to win more silverware for the club. So how we get there is the fun stuff, really.
Personal accountability and team accountability. Presumably you draw a lot on those around you on a kind of formal or informal basis. Is that a lot of that going on?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think more as players, that's the one big thing. I think when you look externally for team accountability, everything's on the head coach, everything's on the director of rugby. That's where all the pressure is. But we're the ones out on the pitch, like we're the ones performing on a Saturday and training in the week. Like, yes, we're being given the tools to do the game we love, but at the end of the day, we're the ones to perform. And so we've got to hold ourselves accountable as players. And yeah, I'm a big believer of we are the final product. So we've got to be the ones to stand up and be counted for on a weekend. And if we're not putting it in, then that's on us. There's obviously lots of little different things that will be going along outside around the week in the club and stuff. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're the ones to try and put the performance in at the weekend.
I mean, as a layman who loves his sport but has never got to further than a first team at school, I get the pressure that you guys are under. And as you've just explained, the buck stops here. You're on the pitch, you're the 15 that have got to get this stuff done. How do you, moving into that kind of tools and techniques and bearing in mind to maintain, we're talking about focus, not stress and pressure, but this will undoubtedly come into it. What do you use? What are the techniques, processes, tools you use to stay focused?
So I guess one of the biggest influences probably in my career in terms of that focus and knowing myself more has been a lady called Katie Warriner, who is our sports psychologist at the club. She actually started, I started with her back at England Sevens, where she was coming in from a GB point of view to work with us. And then she's also done, GB canoeing, GB hockey. She's now ended up at Bath Rugby where I am. We coincidentally enough. So she's been incredible for that journey for me in terms of finding your own motivation, which leads you back into that full focus, which is, I guess it's called the why, finding your why, basically,
your purpose.
Your purpose, which has obviously become more and more prominent across lots of different, whether it's sports or businesses in the last few years, and I do truly believe if you don't fully enjoy, if you don't know why you're doing the job that you're doing, then you shouldn't be in that job. Like that, I know fully every day why I'm doing rugby, because I absolutely love it, and I love what it means to my family and my partner and my friends around me, for them to see me on the screen at the weekends or having fun on the pitch. And I think the day that stops, it's for me to go, actually, yeah, you know what, that's the end for me in terms of rugby. I'm happy move on to the next step in my life.
That's such a good point, Rory. I mean, we all should have that true purpose and clarity and understanding. It's amazing to hear someone have it in spades. That's quite lucky, really.
Yeah.
Do you feel quite enlightened, self-aware? You pretty solid or grounded when it comes to your values?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's probably because of the journey that I've had to get to it now. And I'm not saying it's been a really, like, you hear these incredibly emotional and powerful journeys from people where they've come from sort of the poorest of poor backgrounds, and they're now a world famous sports star, and they're being able to provide for their families. Mine's not that journey, but it was almost that I lived another life before rugby, in terms of it was never, I was just a super fan. Like I was never goal of mine when I was 18, 19, 20 to become a professional rugby player. So the fact that I fell into it and I had to work very hard to get there, I think helps me massively. And I know I'm extremely lucky, because I've been a fan and watched these guys and idolized these guys on TV, to now be in their place. I know I'm extremely lucky to be in the sport that I love, and I would have kept on playing amateur until I was mid-30s, 40s, probably, till my body gave up. So the fact that it's now a job for me and a career just makes me more happy and humbled to be here.
That's an interesting story. It's not one I was really expecting. It's this unexpected career. I as you said earlier, I was going to be a teacher, and now I find myself a pro rugby player, and that is clearly an inspiration. I didn't expect to be here, so I'm going to work really hard to stay here. How much is your kind of your pre-life, as you said there, your past experience, shall we say, how much do you draw on that now to kind of keep focused, both good and bad experiences?
Yeah, a lot. My family life they were always so supportive for us as children pursuing what we wanted to do when we were growing up. I look back and I still got so many good mates back from school, from university. I'm still in a WhatsApp group from university, from like 23 lads from my university rugby club, and I'm still in that. And I'm 30 years old.
I'd like to think what goes on in that way. WhatsApp.
Yeah. It's just abuse to me every time I play badly. No, it's like stuff like that. I still go back. My mum's side's based in Kent, and I head back to Cranbrook, where my old school and my old village rugby club, where I'd spent 10 or 11 years in the minis and youth section. My brother's now teaching at the school that I went to. So I still have all those memories, and I still can go back to that whenever I want. And it's had a massive impact on me and on my journey, knowing that the amount of, as across a lot of rugby players, the amount of volunteers that have helped you get to the place you are, off the back of their own sort of goodwill, and then wanting to push you as far as they want. So yeah, I remember the Cranbrook days, the Nuneaton days, my first sort of taste of men's rugby in the UK, where I used to travel from uni with my then coach Phil Llewellyn, sort of an hour and 15 up on a Tuesday, an hour and 15 back, do the same Thursday and play on a Saturday, and then finish up working a 6 or 7 hour bar shift Saturday night, having just played rugby all day. So no, I still look back and have some seriously incredible memories of that journey that got there.
He sounds like quite a mentor, Rory.
Yes, yeah, he was. He's still involved with rugby. He does a bit with Oxford Ladies now, bit with Birmingham City University, I think. And I still chat to him and see him. I saw him at the weekend, actually. And to be able to keep those mates close is great, I think, because then I'm not worried about it, but you hear about these kids that have all they've known is the pathway to professional rugby. So since 16, they were the next big thing. 17, next big thing. Finally get their academy contract. They finally get their first team contract, and then at 23, maybe they don't turn out to be the thing that everyone thought they would, and suddenly they are without a club, or they start dropping down the leagues, and they don't have that backup plan. Where I feel I'm very confident knowing that I had a lot of life skills. I've obviously got a degree and A levels that I can look back at, but the fact that I worked in New Zealand for a year, did my degree, worked in bars and stuff like that before becoming a professional rugby player, I'm happy knowing that I can end my career and jump into something else.
And does that provide you, or rather, let me put it another way, what does that provide you with when when you're playing? Is it a certain confidence that there's other stuff to go back to? I love the idea that you weren't set on a path necessarily at 8, and maybe it's that flexibility of thinking that has allowed you to be a little bit more, maybe relaxed is the wrong word, but focused in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's probably a big sort of perspective gainer. I know what it's like preparing for a job in the real world, sort of thing. And I know what it's like waking up at 8 o'clock to go play 2 hours north and then get back and go to bed at 5 a.m. the next morning, having worked a night shift. Like, it's not horrific. Loads of people do that kind of thing and have to provide for families and stuff. I was doing it because I wanted extra money at uni and stuff like that. So it's definitely gives me a good perspective of knowing that life is so much different outside of rugby, and it's not the be all and end all, and it's a very, very short career. Mine's going to be shorter than the average person because I came to it so late. Like, I didn't make my premiership debut till I was 27. Most people make it sort of 22, 23. So I'm already 5 years after. So yeah, I think it is mainly that sense of perspective that helps keep me motivated, keeps me focused, and knowing that it could all end tomorrow in terms of a career. And a lot of boys have that horrific injury that ends their career. So it's just making sure that we are doing things around it and not just making your identity as just a rugby player. Your identity is who you are.
It's such a good point, Rory, and I love your use of the word perspective. I think you're spot on, and it's an interesting. Everyone will draw different conclusions from that point, but for me, that doesn't affect our ambition, our drive, our focus and concentration, determination, just because we can put it in perspective and see it as a more holistic part of our lives. Maybe this is a part of my life. Maybe this project that I'm involved in is important right now, but in the grand scheme of things isn't going to change the world. And that's an interesting view. I think maybe we need to check ourselves sometimes and put it into perspective before we lose all sense of that perspective. So it's a great point. And what about kind of challenges? I mean, you mentioned at the top of our chat about it's a bit of a tough time for Bath Rugby at the moment. When you are challenged to remain focused, challenged to stay positive, how do you overcome that?
I think the main thing is probably the support network that you have around you. No one can do everything on their own, by themselves. I think that's one thing over the years that has helped me massively, just knowing there's a lot of people that care about me outside of the sport, as well as inside. And I think knowing that making sure you have that support network that you can go to, and you have your coping methods that you can use when you're in that state. And it does. There's a lot of dark times and injuries. One of the darkest points of my career was pre-World Cup. It was my first ever time with England 15 sides. So I'd trained for 10 weeks, 11 weeks with them, and it was getting closer. And I ended up, people would be coming and leaving at the end of most weeks. So the squad would be mixed up, and I kind of lived it week to week thinking this could be my last week with the England side. Like, I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. So work hard, but make sure you enjoy the moments outside of the training base as well. And it got all the way to the week before the selection, and then there was a test match that weekend against Wales, and I suddenly realised, oh my god, like I'm in the mix here. There's probably one, two, or three of us, one of them's going to get dropped. That were probably on the fringe. And then as the week went on, I realised I could get my first cap here. This is actually going to happen, out of the blue almost. And then I picked up a freak injury in the gym that week. So I tore a bit of hip fascia in my hip flexor, doing a routine exercise that we'd done for the last 12 weeks, just completely out of the blue. I then rehabbed it. So I'd obviously gone on that low. I'd tried to rehab it. The final World Cup selection was on that Sunday. I again got told I got picked for that. So I'm suddenly on top of the world again within 24 hours. Rehabbed well, ready for the return fixture against Wales the next week at the Millennium Stadium. Get through the week, get named in the side again, get presented with my shirt, captain's run. The last rep of captain's run, we do a back attacking strike move. I just push off and Mahami goes. And suddenly it's literally like the world's imploded on me.
This is a roller coaster, Rory.
Oh, yeah, an absolute, it's a 10-day roller coaster that just, still. And I think all of the emotions behind getting picked the first time, injured, getting picked for the World Cup squad, getting injured again, all came out in that sort of period after my hamstring tear. And I think there's footage somewhere of me sort of in the dugout next to the training pitch. Like, I think Manu Tuolangi comes over and gives me a hug and I'm just sobbing into his shoulder. And like, it's all just coming out, all this sort of pressure that I didn't probably realize had been building up. And it just, went out. So that, like, those 2 days after that were probably one of the toughest points in my career where I realized how much support I did have around me, and people, because the worst thing was people don't know that you're injured. So you're still getting, like, my phone's never been busier, but hundreds of messages on all types of platforms, WhatsApp, text, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everyone's messaging saying, good luck tomorrow. Like, hopefully second time lucky. Now you're not injured. And they obviously don't know that I'm injured again. So I that went, my girlfriend, my dad, my stepmom were down at the hotel that night, ready for the game tomorrow.
Oh, no.
So they were incredible with me. Eddie Jones, the England head coach, sort of brought me into his into a room that night and sort of just chatted to me about it. It was like, don't worry about, like, you're here because what we don't need to see you play before the World Cup. Like, you're here because of what you've done this year. There's no pressure. So that gave me more confidence just to know I could take my time with my hamstring, build myself back up, and then eventually did to make my debut 2 days before we flew to Japan against Italy. So it did come to fruition at the end.
There's the happy ending I was waiting for, Rory.
Yeah. So it's amazing those times that you realize how many people sort of care for you and sending a lot of messages, and you know exactly who you want to talk to at that point as well. You know who your really close mates are, your family members, and who isn't just going to think of you as the rugby player, who's going to talk to you like you are Rory. You find them out very quickly, and not from their fault or like from what they've done, but you just know who you want to talk to.
Yeah, it's a great lesson. I mean, it's something that a lot of these conversations often point to, is the importance of our community. And you can say that that's a word that seems to be bouncing around a lot at the moment. But by that, you've just explained it gloriously in the choice of your friends, your family, your coach, your players, your colleagues. That's something we all need to do a bit of, is find our community, because in tough times, it's those people that we will turn to. And if we don't have a community, if we don't have a support network, it can be a very lonely place. So there's no doubt on the importance of that. So it's a great shout. We are alarmingly into our final few minutes already, Rory. That's just flown by. I feel like I feel quite exhausted just listening to the tales, the roller coaster of Rory McConnochie's professional career. We always like to end with a few kind of actionable points, if you will, that are communicating can take away. Any thoughts, actionable points on and around focus? What's worked for you? What might work for others?
If you can, one massive thing over the last few years for me has been giving up your time to help other people. I think volunteering is just huge in terms of, again, we've used that word perspective, but it makes you realize it's not all about your job and all about what's going on right now. There's so much happening out there in the big world that you are such a minuscule part of everyday life. Even as a professional sportsman, you realize no one cares about that. There's so much more going on that with such greater importance. So yeah, I'd say that I've been volunteering for 3 years now for a company called, an organization called Give Us a Shout, which is basically a text unit. I'd say as similar to Samaritans as you can get, but just over text. Hits a lot of young people out there and a lot of people going through crisis moments where they can just text and be into a non-judgmental environment. They can remain completely anonymous. And I've just found, it just completely takes you away from that rugby bubble that I am in for the rest of the week, for those sort of 2 to 4 hours a week. I'd say that's been huge for me.
I think it's one of the most interesting points for me personally, Rory, out of our chat, is your discussion around perspective. And as you've just said there, the thought of giving to others, of spending time volunteering on other things, has allowed you that perspective that, sure, your career is incredibly important, but it's not the only thing in the world. There are other things there. That's a really interesting point. It's one I shall go away and consider the perspective as an aid to focus. I wouldn't have thought that.
No, it's definitely, one of those. And I guess for another point is, we touched on it briefly, but that kind of like, why are you doing the job you're doing? Like, what do you enjoy it to the full? Do you look forward to going in, or is it a slog? And as I said, like, I'm not kidding myself in knowing that I'm extremely lucky doing rugby as a child when it was my favorite thing growing up anyway. So it's completely different to someone going into the financial sector or something like that. And it's, if you are massively financially motivated, then that's completely fine. That's why you're doing your job, and but it's making sure you know why you are there. And I just feel it makes it so much more enjoyable when you figure out what drives you and what motivates you, and why you're there in the first place.
Absolutely, great point. The power of purpose and being authentic to our purpose. If like you said, if making money is the most important thing, then happy days, as long as you live to your purpose, whatever that may be.
Exactly.
Rory, it's been outstanding chatting to you. We're recording this in early Feb, and of course the Six Nations is about to start this weekend. England meet Scotland. Any predictions for the tournament?
I feel like if France get it right, if they can sort their consistency out, then they can blow everyone away, blow everyone out the park, and they'll win it. But I do think the amount of talent that England have, God, I could say it now and they could lose to Scotland this weekend, but I think the amount of talent that England have is scary. And, with Marcus Smith taking the reins, I think there can be some seriously exciting performances there.
Fabulous. Well, this is recorded, Rory, so your words of wisdom are now. They're there for all time.
Yeah.
Rory, really, really appreciate the time you've given us today. Thank you so much. Best of luck for the rest of the season.
No, appreciate it, John. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you're interested in finding out more about DevSoc's executive coaching pillar, head over to www.devsoc.shop/coaching and take a look. That's www.devsoc.shop/coaching. Stay wavy.